Okay, good. So welcome everybody. I'm happy to be here with you virtually in this very important conference for the ITSM at Switzerland. So my name is David Billouz. I will have about 30 minutes, a bit less, to discuss one topic I chose for you, which is how we can transition from service management to service manageability. Because historically, we all know that itSMF is about service management. It's a service management forum. So, and I wanted to discuss with you differences between service management and service manageability, not just from the point of view of the terminology, but why it is important to see the difference and what can it bring, in fact, in organizations that deal with digital transformation and the use of agile that my colleague Robert before explained very nicely with the Kanban framework. So I will start with the agenda, in fact, of this presentation. But before I start with the agenda, just let me introduce very briefly myself. You know, I am a certified ITIL Master, and I had I used to be the former vice president of the ITSMF Czech Republic back in 2006. I am French and I live in Prague. And I was also an ITIL Ambassador for Axelos. And just the last information I can give you about my activities in IT service management is that I am the co-author of the last ITIL 4 publication on IT asset management. It's a book that has just been released now, and it was a pleasure for me to co-author it with two other authors from the US, Adam Griffin and Jeffrey Teffertiller. So now let's jump into the agenda. So in fact, we will see back to the history, what is the impact of agile on ITSM, because we will see that historically we had these two kind of worlds that exist. One is stable, IT operation, and one has to be very dynamic. It's the point of view of the customer. So that means customer who wants the service provider to be agile, and we will see what it means in terms of impact for the service provider. So we will see the impact of agile on ITSM. And then as we discuss this impact, so we will talk about agile service management. And in fact, what agile service management is, you can have your idea about that. Agile service management, for instance, is not reduced to DevOps. It's something much broader than that. And I will try to explain that roughly we can say that agile service management is about service manageability. And then how we can reach this service manageability. So we will use a lot of words finishing with ET or TTY, like utility, like warranty, that you already know because they are the basic components for the value from, I think, ITIL version 3 and also ITIL 4. But also we will talk about velocity and agility, not just to have some buzzwords to say that this is the recipe to reach the service manageability. But what I will try to explain in this presentation is how we can combine this concept to reach service manageability, which is basic for agile service management. So at the end of this presentation, hopefully, you will have some information about service manageability. What's the difference between service manageability and service management? Why service manageability is important and how it can be useful for transitioning from ITSM to agile service management. That's the idea of this presentation. Let's jump into the topic now. So let's see the first part, which is the impact of agile on ITSM, where we had this historically this dichotomy between the warranty of operation and agility of delivery. What it means? Let's have a look. So I prepared a small animation. I hope it will work. Yes. First thing, we never deliver services just for the sake of services. So first thing we do is that we, in fact, when I say we, it means the service provider. The service provider delivers services that support business processes. And we, in ITIL 4, they emphasize the fact that in IT service management, now you have this value stream that you can create based on, for instance, the service value chain. But value stream is a very old concept, and many business already use value stream, okay, to optimize or to set up their business processes to be sure that they can, in fact, guarantee a performance of their business operations, a performance of or quality of the services and the products they deliver to their customers. And in fact, the IT services we provide are here to help. They are here to help conducting these business processes. What I say here is nothing new. The basic of ITIL, and it's the basic of IT service management. The raison d'être of an IT service is to support one or more business processes. Okay, when you have a business application that you support, this business application, like a CRM, of course, supports all the the customer relationship. And for instance, it prevents a business development manager to repeat or to give promises to the customers that another, in fact, a colleague already said before, or he has all the information he needs to understand the needs of his own customer. It's just an example. So IT services are here to support business processes. And in fact, when I explain this with the ITIL terminology, we know that all these IT services we see here are in fact part of what we call an IT service offering. And the basic things here with these services from the point of view of the customer is they want useful services. So that means services that support their business processes. And last 5-10 years, we emphasize the importance of not only having useful services, but having usable services. So that's why there is a high focus on experience, customer experience, user experience. These are the basic, I would say, attributes nowadays of an IT service in order to effectively and efficiently support business processes. Okay, so it shouldn't mean something new. All that works thanks to some basics or some, let's say, stable layers. The stable layers are understanding the resources and infrastructure used for the services. And that's why all is laid on the CMDB and the asset management database, okay? Depending if you just want to look at this information from the technical point of view, CMDB, or from the cost point of view, AMDB. But all that give you an information about the resources that are to be managed in order to guarantee the quality of the services and in order to guarantee the performance of the service. So what we say here is, from that slide, I wanted to show how important it is to have services useful and with a high, best level of experience, and not jeopardizing, in fact, the stability of operations that are the key to offer the best performance of services. So this is the ITSM, let's say, ecosystem that works from ages now. And then what happened? Many organizations started to massively use Agile. What it means that the customers wanted a sort of Agile delivery. We will explain what it is exactly. And it had an impact on, in fact, this infrastructure and the resources we need to allocate to these services, which means that there was a higher and higher and higher frequency of changes, okay, which could be handled, okay, for instance, from the point of view of the product, we handle changes through the product backlog, okay, which is something that has been also really adopted massively by many organizations. But it changed a little bit the paradigm. The paradigm now is with the customer want to be to get, in fact, involved, of course, in the conception of the services. They want to have incremental and iterative way to get, in fact, these services, to be sure that we have an empirical approach. We don't know from the beginning what we want, but we keep discovering our needs iteration after iteration. And that's why we have a high level of, or number of changes that we need to handle. So how we can make sure that we make, in fact, these arrows here efficient? How we make sure that we guarantee an agile delivery, and each time we have some changes, we don't create only incidents. That's the main challenge. And when we say agile delivery, I just want to be back to the sources of agile, because I don't want to explain, you know, the different framework. There are other colleagues here who do that much better than me. But if I just refer to the Agile Manifesto, here we can see, in fact, the typical interpretation or misunderstanding we can have based on the Agile Manifesto. And I'm sure that you have been in touch with some of them. If I look at the Agile Manifesto, individual interaction rather than or more than processes and tools, working software versus comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration versus contract negotiation, responding to change versus following a plan. These are the basics of Agile Manifesto, and how it was understood by the customer. It was understood that, okay, they say, individuals interaction versus processes and tools. So we don't need to formalize a lot of things in that case, okay? We need to discuss what we want, and then the service provider will know what to do. Okay, good. On the other hand, it means that the service provider say, oh, finally, now we can have direct access to the customers. That's a good news. But in fact, you see, this topic has been understood absolutely differently from the customer and the IT operation point of view. The same here, when we say software, working software versus comprehensive documentation. What it means from the customer view, they say, okay, we have, in fact, a full range of functionality in the first version of the service, okay? Because that means that we can very quickly get all what we want, Operation says, no, oh, comprehensive documentation is not quite needed. So we don't need to bother too much with the standard operation procedures, okay? You see, there's a big difference. Then this one, minimum users engagement, because we have the customer collaboration. We say at the beginning what we want, and you, the service provider, are the professional. So you know better than us what has to be tested, how it has to be tested, and when it has to be tested. So we will not need to be really engaged in all these phases of specifying what we want and of testing the results. On the other hand, the IT operation, they say, okay, in that case, what we can expect, or what in fact will be the results of this, is a high number of user requests and incidents that we can expect, because many things have not been properly tested. And the customer said we have to test it, and we think that we don't have to do that. So at the end of the day, many things have not been tested. And last part, here, responding to change. So, you know, in Agile, you welcome changes versus following a plan. Customer can constantly change their mind. That's the way they understood that. And in IP operation, it means that we have a lot of RFC, requests for change, to handle. So you see, when we look at the Agile Manifesto, and I beg you that if you do this experience in your organization, you will have very similar results. What does that mean, these sentences for a customer? What does that mean for a person working in IT operations? So how we can, and that leads to this, what I call the Agile Service Management dilemma. Okay, the dilemma is that we need to guarantee a stable infrastructure. That's the warranty of operations. Customer, as we saw, they have a clear idea, maybe a wrong one, but a clear idea of what they want when they want more agile delivery of services. So if IT focus on more agile services, then of course there is a threat to have less stable IT in operation, because we will have to manage a lot of changes. How we can, in fact, ensure that we don't jeopardize the warranty of operations and we please the customer with more agile delivery of services? That's the dilemma. That's the topic. And that's the main thing I would like to discuss today with you. So, I explained the dilemma that can be addressed in Agile Service Management. Now let's see how we can, handle it, what we can do with that. And what we can do is that we can use, in fact, service manageability. But what is it, service manageability? Let's back to some key definitions. First definition, you can find it in ITIL 4. Is the definition of service management. In service management, we said that it's defined as a set of specialized organizational capabilities. Okay, capabilities. By the way, that all the practices in ITIL 4 were initially meant to be named as capabilities. So all the practices we have normally should have been named capabilities, but because the word capability should not be easy to translate in different languages, the authors of ITIL 4 decided to use the word practices. But for instance, typically, availability management is a capability, typically, okay? And what it means, a capability? A capability, it's an identified potential resource, okay? The 4 dimensions of service management are focused only on resources. When you look at these 4 dimensions, the value streams and processes, information and technology, partners and suppliers, organization and people, in fact, these dimensions are here to categorize the resources you use to deliver services. Okay, so they are focused on resources. On the other hand, service management is defined as a set of capabilities. So there is a kind of, okay, why we talk in one way about resources and why we talk in one way about capabilities. And that's the main thing we have to see, because in other words, service management is focused on resources. And what is really focused on capabilities is service manageability. So it's not about what we already use to operate our services. It's very important. But what is also equally important is to know our capabilities that can be then transformed into resources to deliver better services, to align with the customer needs that always change. You remember, customers need agile, customer change their mind, customer always want more for less. So that's the idea of the service manageability. And this is the main difference. One is service management focused on resources, service manageability is focused on capabilities. And the main challenge in capability is to really identify these capabilities. That's something that we will discuss in a while. So if we use the service manageability, it can be, and we will see down in the next slide, it can be a way to reconcile these 2 points of view. You remember, we saw that the customer and the IT operations have a different view on agile. And I gave the example of the Agile Manifesto for you to understand these different views. So if we can, in fact, introduce Agile service management, this could lead, because of course you have many other, let's say, factors that can influence that, but it can lead to a common view of customers and IT operation on the Agile Manifesto, which would be a good, quick win if at least customers and IT operation understand what Agile is about. I think it would be a good start for a good collaboration between them. So now we will take all the four parts of what I explained here. You see the individuals, interaction, working software, and so on, all these four pieces, and how service manageability support this part of the Agile Manifesto for you to understand how service manageability can really help reaching Agile service management. So for instance, service manageability supporting individuals and interactions. Individual interaction can help us getting, from tacit knowledge, what you have in your head, to an explicit knowledge that can become a resource for all of us, which is a main challenge. If we discuss together, if we interact, a lot of things can be discovered. And tacit knowledge is a capability that can become explicitly a resource to manage services. The stakeholders' requirements. Stakeholders' requirements is also a source of, improving the Agile or introducing Agile service management. Because, we are always focused only on the customer, but you have many different stakeholders that have some requirements on services. So we need to identify them. We need to manage them holistically. That's also based on individuals and interaction. And then my colleague previously explained also the loop, the feedback loop. And this is something very important also in Agile. Because you remember, we said that what is important is also the customer and user experience. So the feedback loops are very important. So this is also something that can be used or helpful. How service manageability can support outcomes? That we have real usable, for instance, knowledge-based articles, real usable, and not knowledge-based article for IT, but for users, which is something that is very important. We can analyze the services that are not used or part of the service that are not used, because that's where we can get higher outcomes, without a big effort. It's a quick win. And also how we can set an acceptable amount of technical debt. That's another thing. Then how we can support customer collaboration. One thing is that, in fact, we can have some realistic time from customers that user can allocate on service specification and validation. That's what I say, the customer says, okay, you can do everything, you can specify what we want, you can test what we need. No, they need to understand, and that's part of the collaboration with the customer, which part of the time the users can allocate for that. They want something, but they need to be engaged, and they need to work with us and to have some time for that. Okay. Also, we can use some collaborative platform. Okay. A lot of examples exist. One of them is Zoom or Teams and so on. And there should be a transparent commitment of IT on service quality. Transparent, and it has to be something that from the real representative of the IT service provider. Because sometimes, the business developer says something and the realization team says it is not possible. How we can really transparently commit on the service quality. How we can welcome change. In fact, welcoming change is that, for instance, you can really easily group or define some rules. One thing important here, and I will not read all the slide here, the key thing here to adjust or to define a very effective release policy. Sometimes it's forgotten, but release policy is very important because it's a way to not interrupt business processes with a good frequency of releases that has been shared with the customers, and an efficient way to group a high number of requests for change in one release. So release management, specifically this capability, this practice, is very useful to welcome changes. Okay, and then to combine this part, you know, the utility, the warranty, which are part of the value proposition, and velocity and agility. So if we come back to our previous slide, in fact, or one of the previous slides we had about the relationship between the services and business processes, what we can say here is with service manageability, we can introduce more warranty of agile or quality of services here, and we can also have more agile operations. That's agile service management. So we in fact try to apply some concepts that were specific to processes and IT operations to the services, and concept agile, for instance, that were linked to delivery of services to IT operation. That's the challenge, or that's the purpose of service manageability.
David, 5 minutes.
Yes, I just finished. I have two or three slides. So how we can become more agile with scalable IT solutions, with space for experimentations, proof of concept, feasibility study. That's at the level of the service operation. And also, that's something that is really, really not so often done with monitoring real service usage, because that's where you have a lot of potential for growth. And how can service delivery have warranty? Generalizing regression tests, for instance. Service owners engage in prioritizing the service requirements, and with also continuous deployment, which is something coming from DevOps that can also be very useful for agile service management. So when we use service manageability, we can better identify the capabilities that then can become resources. And that's what we have, for instance, some example here in this slide. And that will be the last slide I had. I wanted to really thank you very much for joining me in this presentation today. And if you want, we have some time for some questions.
Hi, David, question from the audience.
Yes.
Basing on your expertise on this in this area, what will be for you the next generation of the future of service management between, would say, old style tools, process-based tools, and the new one, would say, generation related to better than agile tool, which the process world is completely, would say, decommissioned. What is for your, in your point of view, the future now, and the expectation for the next version of the, for example, ITIL and so on?
Oh, that's quite an interesting question. I don't know if I will be able to answer that in 1 minute, but thank you for that. So if I just try to, first of all, ITIL 4 is still here for a long time. So there will not be a real ITIL 5, I think, maybe in the next 5 years. So because there are a lot of things that have already been written in ITIL 4 that is released, you know, per partes. That's the first thing regarding ITIL. One question is about the ITSM tool. It is true that, for instance, the rise of ITIL 4 didn't really make any revolution on ITSM tool. If you look at ServiceNow, which was based on ITIL version 3, is still more than ever a very robust tool for IT service management nowadays. So in fact, for instance, the introduction of the value stream, which is one of the key things in ITIL 4, and one of the things that I think is an important, you know, topic to answer the question. So the introduction of the value stream didn't revolution anything in terms of ITSM tool yet, because they, I think that many organizations still didn't really address the potentiality of the ITSM value stream, and that can be the next or one of the next challenge that we can address in IT service management.